Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're heading off to South Africa, a place many are looking to launch their next big business venture. We're going deep on a guide for those folks to help map out the essentials.
Sounds exciting.
It is, and important, right? Because when you think about South Africa, it's a place just brimming with potential. But like with any entrepreneurial journey, there are some hurdles. This guide doesn't shy away from those.
No, it doesn't. It's very direct about the realities.
Like regulations, for example. The guide really gets into the weeds with things like the CIPC.
Yeah, the CIPC, it's basically the thing you got to wrap your head around when you're starting a business in South Africa, you know.
Oh.
The Companies and Intellectual Property Commission.
Yeah.
It's all about getting registered, making sure you're playing by the rules.
It's that official stamp of approval, right?
Right.
But, as this guide points out, it's not exactly a one-size-fits-all process.
Definitely not. It gets kind of specific depending on how you're structuring your business. Solo operation, partnering up, going all in on a full-blown company. They've all got their own little quirks in the process.
And then, just to add another layer, there's the industry-specific stuff, like if you're in healthcare or finance.
Oh yeah, gotta love those. Can't forget those.
It makes it feel like you need a roadmap just to navigate the roadmap, right?
They got that right. Preparation is key.
Absolutely. And speaking of key ingredients for any startup, we got to talk funding. This guide breaks down how to navigate the financial side of things in South Africa. What do you think about that section?
It's interesting because while the traditional bank loan route is still there, they don't exactly make it easy, especially for newer businesses.
Banks and their love of a sure thing, right?
Exactly. But here's where it gets kind of cool. South Africa's got these government-backed programs specifically designed to help startups get off the ground.
Oh, wow. Like what?
So there's the Industrial Development Corporation, or IDC, and the Small Enterprise Finance Agency, which is SAFA for short. They're kind of like banks, but their whole focus is on giving startups that extra push.
That is really cool. Almost like having a built-in support system right from the get-go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not just government-backed things. The private sector's getting in on the action, too.
You know, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, you've got angel investors, incubators popping up, accelerators. It's like the whole venture capital scene is getting a South African makeover.
Okay, so funding's covered, which is huge. But even with the funds secured, you've got to stand out, right? Especially in a place as vibrant and dynamic as South Africa.
You hit the nail on the head. This guide really stresses the importance of knowing your unique selling point, like what makes your startup the startup to watch. It could be the product itself, stellar quality, top-notch customer service, heck, even just a really compelling story about how you started.
Because in a sea of businesses, all vying for attention, trying to be everything to everyone, can sometimes mean you end up being nothing to anyone.
Exactly. Find your niche and own it.
So let's say you've got that killer idea, you've navigated the regulatory maze, and you're ready to carve out your space. Yeah. What's next on this entrepreneurial adventure?
Well, this guide lays it out in a very practical, step-by-step kind of way, from that initial spark to actually launching your dream.
And I love that they do that because sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of the idea and forget about all the, let's call it groundwork.
Yeah, the less glamorous side of things.
Like registering the business with the CIPC, which, by the way, we already covered, but it's worth mentioning again just how crucial it is. And then there's the tax side of things with the South African Revenue Service. They don't mess around.
Nope. SARS is serious business.
But once all that's sorted, it's time to build that brand, which is essentially your business's personality, wouldn't you say?
I like that. And in today's world, that means nailing your online presence. That website needs to be top-notch. And your social media game needs to be strong.
Because, let's be real, those are often the very first impressions people are getting. You want to make sure it's a good one.
Absolutely. It's like setting up shop in the digital world. If your website is clunky and confusing, or if your social media presence is non-existent, you're missing out on so much potential.
It's like having a storefront with a flickering neon sign and a dusty old display case.
Right.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a rough visual.
Yeah.
But you get the point. First impressions matter, online and offline.
They really do. Now, our digital storefront is looking sharp, but how do we get those first customers through the door?
This guide talks a lot about relationships, and honestly, that resonates with me. It's all about networking, getting those referrals, and yeah, sometimes even going old school with some direct marketing.
Word of mouth is still powerful.
It really is. But it goes beyond just that initial sale. You know, you want to build relationships that keep people coming back for more.
It's like that restaurant you keep going back to, not just because the food is amazing, but because the service is fantastic and they remember your name.
Exactly. It's about building loyalty, trust, and a sense of community around your brand.
And that doesn't happen overnight. It takes effort, consistency, and a genuine desire to connect with your customers on a deeper level.
100%. And once those clients start rolling in, that's when those sales really start happening.
Show me the money.
That's the goal. But this is also where the guide stresses having efficient operations, because as you grow, you've got to be able to handle that increase in demand without drowning in your own success.
That's a good problem to have, but a problem nonetheless if you're not prepared.
For sure. So having a system for sales that's built to scale, that's huge.
Right, because as exciting as growth is, you don't want it to be the thing that throws you off course. And inevitably, growth often requires, you guessed it, more funding.
Because, like we said, it takes money to make money.
The entrepreneurial circle of life. This guide seems to highlight that as your business grows, so too should your funding strategy, making things like a rock-solid business plan and accurate financial projections that much more important.
Investors want to see that you're not just thinking short-term. You've got a vision, and you've thought about the long game.
So we've got the regulations, the funding, the step-by-step process. We've covered a lot. But this is where the guide gets even more interesting to me. It dives into the unique nature of the South African entrepreneurial world. And one thing it mentions is this idea that it's both unpredictable and bursting with potential for innovation. How can those two things even exist together?
It's kind of wild, right? You've got these economic ups and downs, the political landscape shifting, all of which makes things, well, unpredictable for businesses. But here's the thing about South Africa. It's full of people who are incredibly resilient and resourceful. They find ways to adapt and innovate, almost because of the uncertainty.
It's like they say, smooth seas never made a skilled sailor, or something like that.
Exactly. And it's not just the entrepreneurs themselves. The government's actually taking a really proactive role in fostering this whole startup ecosystem.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, they've got these programs and initiatives designed specifically to support new businesses, encourage innovation. They're not just sitting back and watching it happen. They're actively trying to cultivate it.
That's encouraging to hear. It makes a difference when the powers that be are on board with supporting new ventures.
100%. And it goes beyond just financial support. There's also this really strong sense of community and mentorship in the South African startup scene.
Now, that's something you don't always see, that spirit of collaboration.
It's pretty special, actually. People sharing their knowledge, connecting with each other, genuinely wanting to see each other succeed. And that kind of brings us to another really interesting point this guide makes about the emphasis on social impact in South African startups.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to ask you about. It seems like there's a real drive to not just create profitable businesses, but businesses that also make a positive difference.
It's a huge part of the landscape there. South Africa's got this complex history, but through it all, there's this powerful push for social justice, for equality, and that context really shapes the way people approach business.
So it's about more than just the bottom line. It's about using business as a force for good.
100%. A lot of entrepreneurs there see their businesses as vehicles to drive positive change, and not just as like an afterthought, but baking it right into their core business model.
I love that. Like, profit and purpose can coexist and even complement each other.
That's the idea, and it's a trend you see globally, but it really seems to resonate in South Africa.
Which makes you wonder if that commitment to social impact actually gives these businesses a competitive edge, like it becomes part of their unique selling proposition.
Absolutely. Consumers, especially younger generations, they care about that stuff. They want to support brands that align with their values.
Okay, so we've established that social impact is huge in the South African startup world. But can you give us some tangible examples of what that actually looks like on the ground?
Yeah, totally. A lot of it's happening in the tech sector. It's booming in South Africa. And you see a lot of these startups using technology to address social issues.
Oh, cool. Like what?
So, for instance, you've got startups creating these mobile health platforms to bring healthcare to underserved communities, or educational technology companies developing these really innovative digital learning tools. And then there's fintech startups working to make financial services more accessible.
Wow, it's incredible to see how they're tackling these big challenges head on, using tech as a tool for good.
And what's really inspiring is that so many of these startups are driven by young people who are passionate about creating a better future.
They see the problems and they're like, we're not waiting around for someone else to fix it. We're going to do it ourselves.
Exactly. And that energy is contagious. You know, it inspires others to step up and take action.
Hmm.
So for someone who's dreaming of launching their startup in South Africa, they're entering this really unique and exciting ecosystem.
One where they can build a business they're passionate about, but also be a part of something bigger.
Right. And this kind of leads to another crucial point from the guide. The importance of understanding the local culture when doing business in South Africa.
Makes sense. You can't just show up with your idea and expect it to translate perfectly. You got to meet people where they are.
Exactly. Building relationships is huge in South African business culture. Face-to-face meetings, really taking the time to build trust, understanding how people communicate, it all matters.
So maybe skip those generic cold emails.
Maybe. Nothing beats a genuine connection.
So true. It's about respect, taking the time to understand the nuances of a culture. And hey, it doesn't hurt to learn a few phrases in another language either, right?
Absolutely. Especially when you consider South Africa has 11 official languages. English is widely spoken, especially in business, but showing that you're willing to go the extra mile, it goes a long way.
It's a sign of respect, and it can open up new opportunities and markets.
100%. It's all about approaching business there with cultural sensitivity, being willing to learn, and genuinely wanting to build those connections.
Well said. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, it's amazing. We've talked regulations, funding, the nitty-gritty of setting up shop, the importance of a killer brand, and embracing social impact. We've really explored this from all angles.
I know, right? It's a lot to take in, but in the best way possible. So much to learn and explore.
Definitely. But hopefully what we've touched on today gives our listeners a solid foundation to build on.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up, I got to ask you one last thing. We've gone deep on the how of launching a business in South Africa, but for someone just dipping their toes into this world, what's that one golden nugget of advice you'd give them? That one thing they should really take to heart?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think if I had to boil it down to one thing, it'd be to really embrace the spirit of Ubuntu.
Ubuntu. Now you've piqued my curiosity. Tell us more.
So Ubuntu is a Nguni Bantu term. It's about recognizing that we're all connected, Our actions have an impact on each other, and we're stronger when we work together.
Okay, so kind of like a deep-rooted sense of community. Exactly. And it's a really powerful value in South African culture, one that extends into the business world too. In a startup context, you see Ubuntu showing up as collaboration, mentorship, people genuinely wanting to give back and support each other.
I love that. It's not just about building your own empire. It's about uplifting others along the way.
100%. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. As you embark on this entrepreneurial adventure, keep that spirit of Ubuntu in mind. Seek out mentors, collaborate with others, find ways to give back to the community that supports you. Your successes will be that much sweeter for it.
So well said. And that wraps up another deep dive. We traveled all the way to South Africa, explored the ins and outs of launching a business, from the nuts and bolts of regulations and funding, to the power of a solid brand and the importance of understanding the local culture. And we even uncovered the philosophy of Ubuntu, a guiding principle for building a business that doesn't just thrive, but also gives back to the community around it. We hope you feel inspired, informed, and ready to take your ideas to the next level. Until next time, happy innovating.